So resuming the meeting, in short, John, you're going to come back to us with options for the piece of road outside Te Tata Ōtapo. You don't need any.
That's correct, yes, I will come back.
You've got to steer from, I think, from this committee that we recognise something needs to be done there.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, so putting the recommendations in front of us, that we receive and note the report, and we note that officers recommend option B, and that we approve the draft plan. Lost my page again, going back to 92. Approves the draft plan, except leave Major Drive, Dowse Drive and London Road at 50 kilometres an hour, and that we go out to consult with on the intention to move Wainuiomata Hill road speed from 80 kilometres to 60 kilometres an hour. They're the recommendations. No further debate. That's, say again. That's the lot. You've got a comment to make. Thank you, Councillor Dyer.
Cool. So I've been holding back because we've been in little pieces around the edge. This one is a tricky one, but I think we've got a good balance here. It really is about safety over convenience, which we quite often deal with bus stop reviews and all sorts. But the likelihood of surviving dramatically increases when cars are travelling just a little bit slower. And I think people often forget that speed reductions themselves aren't a driver to reduce the cause of crashes, but they do significantly increase the likelihood of survival. And we usually, not always, but we usually hear about the fatalities on our road, but you certainly never hear about the serious life-altering injuries that occur. And I think the important thing to remember as well is what's driving this change, and it's the road to zero. And my question back to people when they ask or have a comment on this that they don't like it is, if road to zero is not okay, then what number are you happy with? Because for me, zero is where we should be aiming.
Councillor Mitchell.
Just to speak to a couple of points, and again, I think it's a really good plan. It is a really complicated issue, which is why I've used the word simple a lot today. I think, keeping this complicated issue simple is a key to getting it across the line. And, just to comment on the public feedback we received, there's been a lot of noise about this issue nationally and locally since this plan was proposed, and to only have 52 people opposed to it, submit in opposition to it, compared to what other cities are experiencing, I think is a sign that there is general support for these, particularly this first round of initiatives around making our schools and shopping centres. It's a no-brainer. I think there's a lot of support out there for it. And just to comment too, there was a really good paper in here. I think maybe Andrew made it. I wasn't quite sure about the technical notes that were included as an appendix. So just to acknowledge that really good paper too, which talked about the cost of these things, not just necessarily the human cost, but the social impact. There's a figure in there of $175.57 million of the social impact of actual accidents in Lower Hutt in the last 5 years. And the interventions we're being asked to make, I think we're $2.25 million worth. So even if we can knock off, 1/9 of that impact, then there's a real benefit to this work being done, and there's a real benefit to it being done anyway. So I think those figures kind of speak for themselves, how important it is that we get on with this work and with reducing the accident rate in our city.
Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am just going to make a couple of comments, and Richard Hardy's really going to like this one because I do think the team here, and I think what we've proposed has really struck the right balance between making our streets and our spaces more safe with the reductions that we're proposing and the work that we've done with changes around schools in particular. And also getting that wider community buy-in, and I think that social license, which I often talk about in the changes that we make, and it's really important that we go with our community when we are making change. And I think that this does that. I think it also does signal that obviously the direction and trajectory that we are on, and we've already heard from members of the community who would like to see us do more in their particular local neighbourhoods and streets. and no doubt that will be something that we are able to work through once these changes are in place and program them in as well. So I think that, as well as the comments that have been made by Councillor Dyer, Councillor Mitchell and others around crashes and the harm and the benefits of this, also I think particularly for Jackson Street, our CBD, I think it makes it a more attractive place for people, for alternative forms of transport, scooters, bikes, and that is an important part of this as well, and making our centres more livable and usable by all people. So I know that when I go into an area in the wider region or wherever, when I see a 30-kilometre sign, it does change your mindset quite significantly around how you also behave, I think, in your car in those areas. So not only does it obviously drop the speed, I think it does put drivers on a wider alert, which is only a good thing for people outside of cars. So I think we have done a good job here, and I also agree that since we haven't had some of the reactions, I know that it happened across the country, that we have struck that right balance. And also we did have, political parties and members put forward petitions and put this out there quite publicly, and still we didn't see that type of response that has happened in other parts of the country as well. So again, well done to everyone involved.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. This is just a quick one for the residents in Harbour Ward and particularly Eastbourne. I just want to thank them for highlighting, their need, their desire to have a slower area, and just to reassure you that it will happen. The council is driving safety first throughout the city. So I support the great work they've done, and just for the Bay to have a bit of patience, and it will happen. So thank you, officers, and I support all the councillors' comments as well.
Yep, some very good comments. And to end this with a thank you to John and Andrew and Kent for guiding us through this. Some very complicated, detailed work, not easy, but I think we've struck a good balance. So I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We're moving to page 204 of your agenda to talk about the accessibility program. And once again, it's John and Kent to talk to us. There's a presentation as well, I understand. Oh, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully this one's slightly, there's no decisions on this one, so we just kind of bring your noting paper and doing a bit of a presentation on the accessibility program that Kent's been putting together. So I'll hand over to Kent.
Thank you, John. Kia ora. This program is about the curb ramps and walk-offs at the crossings, which are really important especially for wheelchair and mobility scooter users. And this program aims to improve the accessibility and also the safety for those vulnerable road users, especially because those ramps and walk-offs exist at busy intersections. And also we also involved some assessments and audits in key areas of interest. A little bit of background. This one started last year when we received quite a number of concerns on the conditions of the ramps from the community, especially with the slope of the ramps, or like some crossings missing the ramps where they're supposed to have the ramps. And also we received from the communities to do accessibility audits and to identify the accessibility barriers in the areas of interest. And next, so in these slides, the examples of locations that needs to be improved. And in the photos, it looks even like a little bit flat, and in reality, it's like even deeper and more dangerous. And next slides, please. And these are further examples. And next, so we've got, while we look at addressing those, doing those upgrades, we've found a few challenges. The first one is the costs, especially the temporary traffic management costs. Although the works are quite small, since they locate at busy intersections, the temporary traffic management costs are quite high compared to the total cost and also the budget. And yeah, we also find it difficult to find the contractors because of the small scale of the works. And we find that on most of the roads, the camber is quite steep and high. And also the barriers can be unnoticeable as we showed in the previous slides, the photos. It's quite hard to see in the photos. Next slide. And this slide's for what we've done so far. So we've done accessibility audits together with CCS Disability Action and Wilson Keynes. And I've also done site walks with community members, which are very eye-opening. So we've walked from Bob Scott Retirement Village to Ewan, all the way to Ewan Bridge, and it was quite scary for mobility scooter users, and there were multiple events where they nearly fall off. And yeah, so we've got regular communications with the community members and organizations and made a list of the locations that need to be upgraded. And in the last financial year, we've upgraded 10 locations in the list. For example, the one in Ellistown at the corner of Montague Street and Cuba Street. And that one's done. And the other ones are, the process for upgrading the other ones has started last year and expected to be done next week. And in the list, we've made a criteria to prioritize the walk-offs based on how inaccessible they are, or are they lacking, and what kind of safety concerns do they have, or is it in an area where there are shops and utilities and public transport and also cost. And we also look at whether there are other projects in the area. If there are other projects, we have an opportunity to do the works in their traffic management plan, which would save the cost massively, and also identifying also the ramps and the frequently used routes are prioritized. So the accessibility audits were done in 3 areas: the area around the hospital in Bob Scott Retirement Village and at the back of Laura Ferguson Trust in Nainai. And they've made recommendations on the areas and how we can improve in those specific areas. And the high-level recommendations can be summarized into these ones around paving, tactile paving policies and wayfinding strategy and monitoring, and also research into the mobility parkings. And for the future plans, in the current financial year, we'll keep upgrading the priority walk-offs with the available budget, and those areas include the ones in the audit areas like pedestrian crossing in front of the hospital and the ramps and around Ellistown and Bosco Retirement Village, and also some ramps in Wainoi where there will be the other projects.
Thank you. So as we're looking at the other sites on the list and more sites become available as we audit, we'll bring that forward as part of the long-term plan because we don't have a lot of money to be able to do this. So, but just for your consideration as to whether you'd like to prioritise this in the next long-term plan to increase the investment or in certain priority areas. What would be really good is and as part of some thinking we're doing is having higher levels of service for key accessibility routes. So we get to a point where we've got a strategic cycling network, but we kind of need a similar thing for walking and accessibility. So certain footpaths, certain areas have higher levels of service than others because they're in key areas such as near rest homes, community centres, shops, marae, etc. So that's the other sort of part of work that we're doing at the moment. So I'm open to any questions.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, some of which have arisen actually by what you've shown us today. So thank you for the presentation. My first question, and it was one I already had and hoped didn't really need asking, but I assume that some of these ramps were built a long time ago, and that we're currently building ramps to standards which are much better for accessibility than some of those ramps were built at. Thank you for that reassurance. My second question, though, it does relate to the photos you put up, and thank you for putting those up. It appeared from those photographs that perhaps when those ramps were put in, actually they were fine for accessibility. It almost looked like it was the road being built up and up and up since those ramps went in that was the problem. And I just wondered if that's the case in some instances and how we can avoid that happening when roadworks are done in our community.
Thanks, councillor. So yeah, when roads are renewed and resealed, it is usually, it's not a complete rebuild and get rid of everything. They grade off the top and then just add. So you're absolutely spot on. So as we're working towards, the next couple of years programming for renewals and resurfacing, this becomes key, and putting an accessibility lens over that, so that is part of the work that's done moving forward. And on the other hand, though, a lot of the footpaths and the roads are 80 years old, if not some of them older. So we do, there is the wear and tear in certain areas sink more than others as well. So it's a combination of the two.
Thank you. I guess if there's any way that can be built into our roading contracts that accessibility be maintained, that'll be awesome moving forward. And then my final request, and apologies if it's already happened, but the accessibility audit that was done, I think it's been mentioned at other meetings, but I'm not sure that we've actually seen it. I was just wondering if that could be shared with elected members.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mayor Berry?
Thank you for the work on this, and I would agree that this has to be a priority as we consider other things alongside our LTP. A couple of questions. First being the footpath replacement fund, which we've got. Can we incorporate work which we're doing with that to create, synergies with the upgrades that are required for these ramps?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can. So the budget for that doesn't allow us to do a whole lot, and not as much as we want. So we'll be looking at our renewals programs as well, and when we're looking at footpaths in terms of small maintenance jobs, but also the bigger renewals and how we can improve the accessibility at the same time.
Yeah, no, cool. That's good. And the other question was following on from Councillor Mitchell's point around building in accessibility to the road resurfacing contract. Do we have the ability to do that? Is that factored into some of the contracts that we've just currently going through at the moment?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is kind of built in. The contracts need to be, and the works are agreed. So we can actually set some parameters around what that looks like, and it's usually curb and channel as well. So that gives us the ability to look at it.
And is there anything we could be doing between now and the 1st of July next year if there are some clear decisions from council to provide additional funding for this, so we can kind of get into things quickly, so you're not kind of going, okay, sitting on this, we'll do our 20, but we need to wait until the 1st of July before we sort of plan up and scale up to do the wider piece of work.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the 20 are the highest priority, but there's not a lot of difference between them and the next level. So there are a number of other projects that we have that we can cost and provide further information if council wants to consider ahead of the 1st of July next year.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and no harm in doing that, and we can make that decision as that information maybe comes through. But also, I think it's just the case of there's always a little bit of a risk of kind of waiting to see if the budget's approved before. I think you can take as a bit of a gimme this is a priority for the council. So come the 1st of July next year, we are really getting into renewing as many of them as possible once that money's available. But if there are some extra ones in the meantime, I think that's something that's worthwhile bringing to the committee. Yeah.
Thank you, will do.
Great. Any further questions or comments? Recommendations are on page 204, that we receive and note the information, and note that additional funding will be sought from the long-term annual plan. I'll put those motions. Do I have Councillor Mitchell has seconded? Any debate? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to note that I think this is the second most important piece of information that we've got on these papers. We've just discussed the one with traffic safety. The second one, of course, is not only dealing with mobility scooters, but it is dealing, as you've said, with people who are walking. A lot of my work I do in the community is with elderly. And just recently, over the last month, I've had a lot of people say to me they're too scared to go out of their homes or the rest homes because of the safety for them on pavements and getting up curbs and pathways and things. So it's increasing the amount of loneliness and the amount of people staying within their safe environment. One of the ladies just recently, without taking too much more time, has said to me she uses a walker, and she said people do not realise that when we get to an advanced age that it is difficult for us to lift our walkers to get up steep curbs. She has, in the past 2 years, pushed her walker into the curb expecting for it to be able to go up. The walker has gone over, she smashed her nose and the front of her face. These sort of things we don't hear about often because our elderly don't want to worry us. So I think this is a really important piece, excuse me, of work, and I would like to see this carry on to be dealing with those vulnerable people. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you. Since I was first elected to council, I've been from time to time invited up to the Wheels and Canes group up in Nainai and attended their meetings. I was there when they grilled the mayor and made him commit to seeing some action on this kind of stuff as well. And I know Councillor Brown, through her work with the Scootaroos, Councillor Barrett, probably all of us have had interaction with the users of these curbs and heard some of their quite shocking stories. So I'd just like to acknowledge the advocacy of all those groups out in there in the community calling for this action, but also the responsiveness of our officers. It's really good to see these things being taken seriously and action being taken as well. So thank you.
And Mayor Barry, you had another point to make?
You're going to have to choose me before you choose Councillor Mitchell. He keeps on taking my points. But I just wanted to acknowledge the Wheels and Canes group in particular, Grant Rutherford, all of the members of that for their advocacy, and obviously work with Kent and with John and the team. And yeah, that has been really important to be able to get some good traction in this space, but also to all of those other community organisations, CCS also, who've been a really strong advocate in this space. So looking forward to seeing the work continue and agree with every single word of Councillor Barrett around the real impact this can have, particularly on our seniors. And yeah, let's just get on with it.
Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Chair. In our community, there are also young people with disabilities as well, many of whom I work with at the Manaaki Ability Trust. And there are times where I do get feedback on, various crossings like the one over the Woburn and so forth. And so it's great that this feedback can be sort of compiled and we can approach this in a comprehensive manner because this has been, I must say, years in the making. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Good comments from councillors, and thank you, Kent, for your presentation and your work on this. I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Proposed road closures. Hutt Valley Motorsport Club, Port Road Sprints. Move it. There's nothing different from this from previous years. You've got a whole lot of recommendations, 1 through 5 there. It's been moved by the Mayor. Seconder? Any debate? I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Proposed road closure for Cam County Port Road drags. Anyone want to move the... Deputy Mayor Lewis has moved. Seconded. Councillor Dyer. Debate? Put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Page 224 of your agenda, the councillors made a submission on Waka Kotahi's consultation on bilingual traffic signs, and this is retrospectively endorsing it, I understand. Richard, anything you want to tell us about this?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, we have taken a position of broadly endorsing this. We only had a few days to turn the submission around, which is why it's coming to you retrospectively. Just to note that we're in the submission, we've noted our overall work to incorporate Te Reo Māori into our activities. And we have highlighted some implementation challenges that we've noted that we've identified, particularly around funding mana whenua to participate in this and also funding councils at the implementation process. And then just finally, you'll see the two pieces of feedback that we have suggested, and this has been done in consultation with our transport team.
Excellent. Questions for Richard? No questions. The recommendations are that we receive and note the information and retrospectively approve the submission on bilingual traffic signs. As attached as Appendix 1, happy to move that. Councillor Barrett has seconded. Anyone want to say anything? Put the recommendations. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. We're up to regulatory matters now on page 228. Alison has had to leave us to go and catch a flight, but we have Derek Curity and Tim Johnson here to answer any questions that you may have from the report. Anything either of you gentlemen want to highlight to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Just one thing to highlight for me, paragraph 36, just to acknowledge the concerted effort from our environmental health team around our food reporting. So this is an area we've had to increase a bit of resource and to get up in terms of our verifications carried out each year. So we've managed to achieve 100% in recent months. So it's something we've put effort into. It means that in the new financial year, we'll be able to start off on the right foot. So I'm really pleased about that. Other than that, happy to take questions from the floor.
Excellent. And things do seem to be heading in the right direction on all fronts. Are there any questions, councillors? Okay, recommendation is that we receive and note the information. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Tupou, any comment anyone wishes to make? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thank you very much. Bruce is making his way to the hot seat for an update on Three Waters, page 244 of your agenda. Bruce, anything to highlight to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of updates relating to paragraph 3. The first one is that we've just received this morning the latest information in terms of the year-end spend. And for the capital program, we actually spent $68 million through Wellington Water. So they've extended, I suppose, the program that they thought that they would deliver. They've delivered more than they expected. And in respect of that, just this afternoon received notice that we completed 14.5 kilometres of renewals over the year. Remembering that for the last 4 years, we've averaged around 4 kilometres of renewals. So this is a huge uplift in terms of delivery of the work program. And I noted from an email that's come out this afternoon from the Chief Executive at Wellington Water that for the region, they're talking about 18 kilometres of 18.5 kilometres of renewals being achieved across the Metropolitan Council. So if that's correct, we've achieved 80% of it.
That is a statistic to be proud of, I would have thought, given the priority that we and our residents have put on these upgrades. Are there any questions for Bruce on this report? Mayor Barry.
Just a second, can you go and shout that out the window to everyone, Bruce? No, that's really good news. And just to remind me that before we started on the increase over the last sort of 3 years, what were we averaging? And just to confirm for people, that's renewal of water pipe or also a mixture of sewer renewals?
Yes, so for the past 4 or 5 years, we've averaged around 4 kilometres of renewal. That's across all 3 waters. This year, it's, as I said, 14.5 kilometres, and that's made up of water pipe of nearly 6 kilometres, wastewater pipe of nearly 8 kilometres, and the balance is in stormwater.
Further questions for Bruce? Okay, the recommendation is that we receive the report and note its content. Happy to move. Seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Lewis. Comment? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Te Wai Takamoro, Te Awa Kairangi, Riverlink. An update on that. I think Tom is online. Tom, is there anything you want to highlight to us or anything changed since you tabled your report?
No, Mr. Chair, no, nothing to raise your attention to or extra comments, so happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? No questions. The recommendation is that we receive the report and note the content, note the gifting of the new project name Te Wai Takamori or Te Awa Kairangi, the soothing waters of Te Awa Kairangi. Happy to move. Seconder, please. Councillor Barrett. Comment. Put the recommendations. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. The infrastructure and regulatory forward program is on page 256. Any questions about that forward program? I put the recommendation, I move the recommendation that we receive and note the forward program for 2023 as attached to Appendix 1. Seconder, please. Councillor Mitchell. Comment. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I have received no questions. So let's move to our closing karakia and invite you to join with me. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia I te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua e te aratakatu, koira e rongo whakarihia, aki ki runga, kia wātia, aira kua wātia, hau pai marere. Thank you all for your contribution. I declare this meeting closed at 4:11. Have a good weekend, long weekend.